Welcome to Finding Faith, the space we come to share stories of encounter, ask questions, and share in the lived experience of others. As you listen to the stories of our interview guests, I ask that you consider the courage it takes to stand before your peers and share your experience of faith for the benefit of another. My name is Jessie Bennett, and this is the 8th episode of Finding Faith. Today we have with us Cara Bekebrede. Cara, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Cara. I live in Owensboro, but I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky. And I am the Director of Religious Education at St. William and St. Lawrence parishes in Knottsville. So I do a lot with all different age groups, faith formation, and I live in town in Owensboro.
And when did you start at St. William's and St. Lawrence?
I started in May, so I've been there a few months so far.
Cara is going to tell us her story of encountering focus missionaries during college and how that helped bring her to an encounter with Jesus. Cara, would you like to tell us a little bit about your story?
Well, I grew up a cradle Catholic, as many people do. My dad actually was agnostic, and my mom was Catholic. And I went to Catholic schools, kindergarten through 12th grade, and I got Catholic education in that way. But I would have to say I was probably a moralist, meaning that I really paid more attention to the rules than anything else. And I think that really was the way the faith was presented to me as a child. And I think most children it is, it's rules and you obey authority. But then also in high school, it was kind of presented more of a service type faith. So I was always looking for something more to my faith. I really didn't know what to look for, but I was always looking for something more. I didn't think the faith actually had to offer it. So I would go to Mass every Sunday, and I would go to confession twice a year, and I thought I was a saint. I thought I was the holiest person alive, because I didn't murder anyone, and I followed the rules, and I went to confession twice a year. So that was awesome. And I really never missed Mass. I did miss a few times for soccer, but if I did, I watched it on Monday on Mass on the Air. So that made up for it. So I thought I was looking for something more in my life. And I was always telling my mom, when am I going to find real friends? When am I going to really find my place where I belong, kind of? I didn't really know what I was looking for, but I just knew I had this kind of empty feeling. And at first I thought, well, maybe I wanted to find something that I could live and die for, that was worth dying for. And I'd only really heard about people dying for the army or something like that. So I thought, well, maybe I'll join the army. But then I took one class of that in college, and that was not for me. And then my mom also was worried I wouldn't find friends in college, so she had me rush a sorority, and that I thought maybe that's something to live and die for, kind of. Maybe I'll find my place there. But again, it fell short as well. Going into college, it really was worried about finding friends, because my mom always said, well, just wait till high school, you'll find good friends. Wait till college, you'll find good friends. And then when I got there and I rushed a sorority, I found these people, and they really didn't have the same morals or values that I had. But I thought, well, I guess these are the only kind of friends I'm going to have. I guess I really won't find anyone else with the same morals. And I guess I'll just have to give up my search. Thankfully, I encountered the Newman Center at UK. I went to University of Kentucky. And at UK, there were many wonderful people there, and many focus missionaries, or 4 focus missionaries as well, as you mentioned. The one day it really stood out to me was when I was in my dorm room with my sorority friends, and later on that day I went to the Newman Center. But when I was in the dorm room, I encountered one of my friends, and she was like, Cara, come here. So I went over to her, and she said, do you like my belt? It's Coach. It was like $300. And I was like, wow, yes, it's lovely. Sure. And she was like, okay, thanks. I got to go. And at that point, I realized I was just being used for her own validation. And of course, wow, how wounded is she that she needs that? But also I didn't like being used in that way. And that's really what our friendship was based off of. And then that same day, later on, I went to the Newman Center and encountered not just the missionaries, but some of the older students there. And I always thought that no one wanted to talk to me. I always thought that it was a chore for someone to talk to me. They were just doing obligatory nice things. So when they asked me, hi, Cara, how are you? I'd just be fine. Oh, how was your class? Fine. What did you learn? Stuff. Just very simple answers. I was not a good conversationalist because I didn't think they really cared, because I had so many of those previous experiences. And I realized specifically one girl, Mary Liz, was a missionary, a focus missionary. And she said, she just kept asking me, and she was like, well, what kind of stuff did you learn in class? And I'd explain a little, and she would say, well, tell me more about it. And I was like, why is she continuing to ask me these questions? That's just weird. It's like she really wants to know, and she never talks about herself. And she really doesn't seem to care what other people think of her. She had this confidence. She had this presence that I just hadn't really encountered. And it was a very strong contrast to that sorority friend that I had. And so I realized that Mary Liz got that confidence and all those good qualities from Jesus because she prayed every day in adoration for an hour. I just wasn't used to that, and it really struck me. And I also didn't know what adoration was, even though I went to Catholic school my whole life. I did not know what adoration was. I did not know how to pray the rosary. I did not know that daily mass was really a thing, that normal people actually went to daily mass. There were so many things I did not know. Mary Liz just really, really struck me as really caring. And I realized, wow, this is what caring about another person is. This is what friendship is. And I finally kind of found that friendship that I was looking for. And we really had very little in common. I was an animal science major. I loved being outside, loved playing sports, all that kind of stuff. And she had been a teacher and was not very good at sports, or at least she did not enjoy playing as much as I do. And we just had very big differences, but we had Jesus in common. And so I realized, wow, this is what true friendship is, which was a really great thing, especially for a college freshman. So from there, I continued to grow in my faith. She asked me to be part of a Bible study. I said, no, that's lame. I'm not going to do that, because I heard people doing that in high school or grade school, and they were all very hypocritical. One of the girls in my high school that was the leader of the religion club on campus also smoked pot on the weekends. So I was like, no, I really don't want to be a part of it. It sounds boring. And yeah, then she invited me to a small group gathering, and I thought, oh, that sounds fun. An event. I'll go to that. I showed up at the event, and it was a Bible study. So she dragged me in, which was really great. And after just the first meeting, I was hooked. And I was like, this is great. These girls are going to be there. These other young women are going to be my friends. And we all have Jesus at the center, which was a really great time. I also started praying more. Mary Liz introduced me to adoration and the rosary and daily mass. And I started out small, but eventually I craved more and more time in front of Jesus in the Eucharist. And once I realized what adoration was, that Jesus is alive and that he wants to have a friendship, a relationship with you, and that he's there, he really is right there. And she described it as, or Mary Liz described it as like sun tanning. When you're out in the sun, you're going to get tan no matter what you do. So she told me, you don't know what to do in adoration, but if you're in front of Jesus, no matter what you do, he's going to impact you. So I got holier from that a little bit, which was great. I also was very concerned about my resume and my grades, and still had kind of this moralist attachment to things. Like, okay, I'll do everything good, but grades are still a really big deal, and I need to follow the school rules too. So kind of keeping my faith and the school on the same priority. And I would even study organic chemistry in adoration. And one day I was studying, I just couldn't, put anything else in my brain with organic chemistry. So I picked up a Bible and I realized, wow, this is way better. I'm actually getting a lot out of this. And I never studied again in adoration. And I even did better in my classes and got better grades. So God really, what I gave him, he returned 100-fold, especially in regards to my time. So that was really good. I also went back home and started talking to my parents more about my faith. That was really great for them. My mom started coming to daily mass with me some. My dad started asking more questions, or just we started having a lot better conversations. And actually, my junior year of college, my dad entered the church, praise God, at the Easter Vigil. So it was fun. I encouraged them to go to adoration, and I signed my mom up for a 4 a.m. holy hour because we were at daily mass, and someone said, we need people for holy hours. And my mom said, go sign me up. I don't care what time. It doesn't matter. Just whatever. So I asked them what they needed. They said 4 a.m. So I signed her up. And then I went home, and my dad, who was not Catholic at this time, my mom told him, Cara signed us up for a 4 a.m. holy hour. And I said, yeah, Dad, I know that, you have different events and you work sometimes really early, but I know you never work at 4 a.m. So that's why I signed y'all up. So he started going with my mom to protect her because it was the middle of the night, and he started reading the catechism in adoration. And it was after that year that he actually converted and entered the church. It impacted a lot of my life. And I finally realized this is something to live for. This is something to die for, and made God finally my priority. Got out of that moralist mindset, put school back in line with my priorities where it should be. I also started reaching out to other people as well. And actually one thing that my mom said, I went back to her and I said, Mom, why didn't you tell me all these things about the Catholic Church? Why didn't you teach me how to pray the rosary? Why didn't you teach me what adoration was? Why didn't you tell me all these things that I just didn't know? And she said, Cara, because there was no one like Mary Liz for me when I was in college. There was no one to tell me. And I realized, wow, how many people are just like me who think they're a saint. Because you go to confession twice a year and go to mass every Sunday, and that's it. And, think that there's no way to further my faith, or think that there's really no more depth than that to the faith. And so I realized there's just so many people, especially college students, that were just like me, searching for something and get lost because the world drags them in the other direction because there's no one there to tell them, this is actually the depth of the Catholic faith, and there's way more than you think. So after that, I realized I need to start doing something for all those people around me. And Mary Liz actually challenged me to meet a new person every day after Mass. And so I was a shy person. So it was very hard, but I would go up to a new person every day after Mass and introduce myself. And that was also a really formative time for me because it kind of like a flip kind of switched in my mind. Whereas before I had always thought, well, why would this person want to talk to me? This person doesn't want to talk to me because I'm not cool enough. That was a kind of the wrong perspective. And it was also very prideful in a way because it was always centered on me. And instead I started thinking, and seeing people as souls and thinking, instead of why would they want to talk to me, thinking they have a soul that it's going to spend eternity either in heaven or hell. And if I can say one thing, or even if I just say hello to them one time and introduce myself, small things can have huge impacts on them. If I could say, if me saying something is the difference between their soul spending eternity in heaven or their soul spending eternity in hell, then I'm going to do it. And so I started talking to a lot more people, especially about the faith, and just asking them, how they're doing, and kind of doing exactly the same thing that Mary Liz did to me. Kept talking and asking how they were doing as opposed to focusing on me. And I realized that people were really, really receptive. They really wanted to be known and loved. The same, we all want to be known and loved. And they were happy that another person desired to know them. That was a huge change for me, to see other people as souls as opposed to other people that could be gossiping about me or could be judging me. And even if they were, it doesn't matter, because they have a soul and their dignity deserves that chance as well. After college, I then joined the Focus Missionaries and was assigned in Alabama for a while, and then also at Western Kentucky University. And now I'm here. So God used a lot of people in my life to give me a lot of grace.
If it's okay, Cara, I just have a couple of questions I'd like to walk through with your story.
Sure.
I guess one of the first things that stands out to me, you said early on that your dad was agnostic and your mom was Catholic. What was that dynamic like growing up?
Well, every Sunday, my mom would take us to Mass. My dad would go. Sometimes he wouldn't. Sometimes I would want to stay home with him. My mom would force me to go. Every Sunday that we went to Mass, my mom would say, "Okay, kids, 90% of Catholics whose fathers do not go to Mass lose their faith. You better not be that 90%. So my brother and I grew up with that, which was a good reminder, but kind of threatening. But also, both of us are still practicing Catholics, so she did something right. We also would pray every night before we would go to bed. And my dad, they got married in the church. He agreed to raise us Catholic, so he had no problem with it. He really just didn't seem to care much about religion or faith. And I would ask him as a child, I really wanted him to be Catholic. So, many for years or months or just sporadically throughout my childhood, I would say, "Dad, when are you going to become Catholic?" And he'd always say, "I'll think about it." And he never really gave an answer. When I got to college, I had more material to back myself up with and say, well, you're not going to be thinking about it forever. Before you know it, you'll have run out of time to think about it. So that got him, I think, thinking some more. So overall, it was a good situation, but it really would have been nice, of course, to have my dad as the leader of the family.
Yeah, an active part of the faith life of you and your siblings.
Yes.
Then later on, you talk about that he began going to adoration to protect your mom, and obviously that had some sort of an effect on him. What was that journey like of going from agnostic to entering the church?
Well, he actually, I guess I should have backed it up also with, he was baptized Dutch Reformed, because he's actually from the Netherlands, so he's Dutch. So he was baptized and went to a Christian school when he was younger. So he had a lot of background. He knew actually a lot about the Bible. But by the time he married my mom, he really just didn't care enough to believe, I guess. He had a lot of background, and he had a lot of my mom telling him some things, me telling him things. My brother grew in his faith in college too, and telling him things. So it was a pretty smooth transition for him. I would give him a lot of books to read. Sometimes he'd read them, sometimes he wouldn't. And he, of course, it's still an ongoing conversion, I would say, because
as most of us are.
Yes, all of us are. But he's still growing, especially when he didn't have a lot of very good examples of other men in the community for him to see that we're very strong in their faith. So he's still growing, but sometimes he definitely says, well, this is really hard for me to accept, or I just don't understand that. But it's been fun, and recently he's been asking me more and more questions, and every time I come home, he'll ask my mom, and my mom won't know, so they'll have questions saved for me so I can answer for them, which is a lot of fun for me because I get to help them grow in their faith.
Yeah, that's an interesting, I guess, perspective. You know, typically you think of the parents catechizing their children, not the other way around.
Right.
But what a blessing that is for your parents to have you who's so invested in helping them to grow in their faith, and to have family members who are willing to ask questions and to have the desire to seek out those answers. I want to talk a little bit more about focus. You know, you talk about encountering focus missionaries in college. What exactly is focus?
Good question. Focus is the Fellowship of Catholic University Students. And so it's an organization that takes mostly recent college graduates and trains them, forms them very in depth in their faith, and then sends them in teams of 4, typically 2 men, 2 women, to college campuses to continue to evangelize, to build up the community, and to do exactly what Mary Liz did to me, which was help me grow in my faith. And Focus specifically utilizes what they call discipleship, which is kind of one-on-one or 2-on-1, very intentional meeting up and formation, and also friendship, and also teaching you how to pray, teaching you more about the church, teaching you how to evangelize those around you. And then they also specifically utilize small group Bible studies. So they do these things to model after Jesus, because he chose 12 apostles. So that was kind of like his small group Bible study. But then out of those 12, he also chose Peter, James, and John to be there during many of his hardest moments or most glorious moments, the Transfiguration, the agony in the garden. Focus uses small group Bible studies also to form people in their faith, build community, give that kind of friendship that I know I was looking for, and I think many, many other people are looking for as well. Give that community of faith. And Focus also does foreign mission trips as well, kind of along with the school schedule. So they'll take college students on spring break mission trips or summer mission trips, which are very formative as well, because they put you out of your comfort zone and away typically from habitual occasions of sin. So it's a big moment of grace typically.
Wow, that's really awesome. And you call them focus missionaries. Now, this may sound like a silly question, but I thought missionaries were people who worked primarily in like foreign countries and took the word of Jesus to people who've never heard of Jesus. So it's kind of weird to think of them as being someone in the United States where we know about the Bible, we know about the church. So why are they called missionaries?
That's a great question, Jesse. Actually, JP2 kind of expounds on that a lot. He says what he calls the new evangelization, or the new springtime of evangelization. And what the church was realizing was that a lot of Catholic or Christian countries were having a decline in active participation in the faith, or just a decline in walking away from the faith, or increase in walking away from the faith. So JP2 recognized that we need missionaries in these Christian countries, actually, because people are forgetting what the faith is. People are forgetting who God is and what role he plays, especially in first world countries where materially we kind of have everything handed to us. We're typically not starving or anything like that, have to worry about housing or anything. So sometimes we can forget God. So JP2 really says we need missionaries in these places. In America, we need missionaries because our world is crazy and restless. And so many college students, you look at the statistics, it's almost, 90% of college Catholics are falling away from their faith. 8 out of 10 college students actively contemplate suicide. It's a dark place. So we really need to bring the light of Christ there.
Wow, that makes a whole lot of sense when you explain it that way. And talking about your time in prayer in adoration, you have this, you talk about realizing that Jesus is a real person, someone that you can know. And I just wondered, how did that change your relationship with him, going from just this little white piece of bread on an altar to real human person who desires a relationship with me?
I really don't know how exactly it happened. I know when I was younger, I would view God kind of just as all three persons of the Trinity clumped together. I really didn't think of them as independently. And I knew that the Eucharist was Jesus, was God. And I knew that I received him every Sunday, but I didn't know that I could actually know him and that he could know me. And it essentially that he could be a friend as opposed to just God, my creator, and the person who made the rules, which I always liked the rules because I knew they were for my own good and I wanted to follow them. But I didn't realize that Jesus could relate to me, I guess, is the best way to describe it. Just spending the time in adoration. And I remember reading St. Jose Maria Escriva quote that said, it's something like this, that said, do you not realize that Jesus has been waiting for 2,000 years in the tabernacle just for you to show up? And just realizing that he cared about me individually. And when I went to adoration, I really felt that. And I knew that. And of course, prayer is not all about feeling, but it was kind of that knowing in the depth of your soul that this is Jesus and that he knows me and that he loves me. And I'm completely at peace. So I would say there was a lot of feelings mixed in, but also just like the peace and the love that I felt from him.
That is such a good point too, that I liked how you said that prayer is not all about feeling.
Right.
So something else you mentioned in your time of adoration was that after you stopped studying, you started getting better grades. Is this some like magic trick that the Lord pulled with you?
I wish it was. I don't know what it was. It was probably that I was ordering my life better. I had my priorities straight, didn't waste time on Facebook or, just wasting time mindlessly doing nothing, essentially. But I had things I wanted to get to. I wanted to pray. I wanted to get to Mass. I had homework to do. I wanted to spend time with these really great friends that I had. And so I had to schedule everything well. And also I think, scientifically, the less stressed you are, typically the better you do. So I think it took a lot of stress away from me and also took a lot of pressure of, I'm not living for my resume anymore. God is going to take care of me. And I grew a lot from that, and that really helped me. And even professionally, ironically, it really helped me. And I think, I've talked to many people that said, I would hire you just because you did this focus missionary thing and all the things that entailed, because, it's so demanding and it's so impressive. So God knew what he was doing.
Funny how that works out, right? So I just have one last question for you. What would you recommend to people who are just beginning in their faith, people who you talked about, feeling like you were a saint because you went to Mass on Sunday, went to confession twice a year, and that's a great place to start, but it's obviously not the goal. So what would you recommend people do to help move them towards that goal of heaven if they're in that place?
Yeah, I mean, it is a good place to be. And if you're willing, then God is going to use you and to bring other people to Christ and make you holy if you're letting him in. I would have to say, I think the best advice I could give was just take baby steps. If you're going to Mass every Sunday and that's all you can do, praise God. If you can go maybe Saturday mornings too, add that in. If you can go every month instead of twice a year, try that. And I just realized the more I gave God and taking these baby steps, I would pray the rosary once a week, and then I'd pray the rosary twice a week. Before long, I wanted to pray the rosary every single day because I realized God was changing me and he was healing me and he was tending to my wounds and my needs. So I just would have to recommend taking baby steps. Build a really good community around you because bad company corrupts good morals. So if you have people continually dragging you down, it's really, really hard to keep moving forward in the faith. Yeah, just do little things and keep going, never give up, and keep seeking counsel and friendships that will keep building you up and making you a saint.
That's some excellent advice. And for anyone listening, there's always people at your local churches who are willing and wanting to walk with you through this. So if you ever have any questions, I encourage you to reach out to your local priest or, a DRE or a youth minister or someone who works in a parish to help walk with you through your questions. Cara, thank you so much for joining us here today. It's been a pleasure to hear your story.
Thank you, Jesse.
And thank you all for listening here today. If you are interested in hearing more stories of finding faith and encountering, tune in next week for our next guest. If you have any questions, need someone to journey with, or would be interested in sharing your story, please contact me at findingfaith123@gmail.com.